some times that I was just kind of like spiraling, aimless, without a lot of direction. And but it also is like what made me who I am, and I wouldn't change anything about that.
Welcome to Conversations with Kendall. I'm your host here. My name is Kendall Lutz. I'm a real estate agent or a real estate advisor, whichever one you prefer this day and age, here at Preferred Shore in downtown Sarasota. This beautiful building I'm in. My guest today is the founder and president of Preferred Shore. And from what I hear, just a great all-around guy. Welcome, Robert Milligan.
Well, thank you so much, Kendall. I appreciate you having the interest to have this conversation with me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And one of the first things I did, Robert, was I did some homework, talked to your staff here, and I said, give me one word that describes Robert Milligan.
Ruh-roh.
Yes, that's what I thought, but it came out pretty good. The words I heard was positive, passionate, wise, caring. All very good, all very nice things. What would you, if you could define yourself in one word?
Man, this is a tough way to start a conversation. I think curious.
Curious. Good. Mm-hmm. And that probably drives you, because that's my next question. And what would drive you? What drives you to the level you're at now? Is that the curiosity and
Yeah, I mean, I think that I've been the sort of person that for whatever reason, I really enjoy to do a lot of trial and error for the sake of optimization. So, I love to get involved in good strategy, and, that takes sometimes a little bit of retooling for people to get accustomed to failing often and failing fast. But I really believe that you fail your way to success. So that's kind of, I guess, the context of why I would say curiosity, because you have to be willing to venture and try stuff. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. So I mean that would kind of summarize, I think, our winning formula, if any, is that we dabble in a lot of stuff and we take little systematic risks. We're not like betting the farm, but we just stay curious and evolve and adapt and try stuff. And
which is interesting. They also said that you're so even-keeled. And that's the thing about Robert, and nothing too high, too low, just steady flow.
Definitely true. I mean, it's a discipline that I formed for the sake of kind of optimizing my abilities as an entrepreneur and for more like business-like settings. But there's pros and cons to that. I think that it's probably better to show a little more emotion in like a personal context. Sometimes I struggle with that, but I love my wife to death, but like anybody, I would say that like I could probably tell her that I love her more often. Not that I never do, but you know what I mean. So like, yeah, I'm very even keeled, but like there's not a lot of highs and lows. But I think where the idea for that came from was I was a student of investing, and Warren Buffett has been like a childhood mentor of mine, which is a weird mentor to have. For most people, it's like sports stars or whatever. But for me, it was like the
money man.
Yeah, like the classic investors that have been just had a prolific track record. So that was like the discipline that he really reinforced, is that you have to keep your head screwed on straight when everybody else is losing theirs. If you're not at ease or at peace, I think would be the right word, you can't be creative. That, if you feel like, you're stressed or there's some kind of external factor that's taking you out of your center, that's not a place that you can deploy creative energy from. So that's why I try to stay like super centered as best I can, no matter what's going on around me. Because if there's, to me, that's the priority is using creative energies and trying to harness that and just think about the future and, be a little bit longer term in your thinking.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Let's now, you had mentioned in another earlier podcast that you started working with your father at about the age of 15.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Driving around in a car. Probably didn't have a license back then.
Yeah, I did not. That would not be possible.
Tell me about where you grew up. You grew up here in Sarasota at that age of 15. Where were you at?
So we moved here in '96. So I've been here for the most part from then on. we had a brief, unfortunate stint in Orlando for about a year, kind of like around the time of the Great Recession. The market really slowed down here, so my wife and I chose to go to Orlando. I had a great group of realtors that I was working with then, and that was like being more of an international city. There were still a lot of people coming and going, and the market was still a bad season for everyone in real estate, but there were more transactions to be had. So we went there, and nothing wrong with Orlando, but it wasn't like the lifestyle for us, being that we're so intrinsically tied to the water that we definitely felt a bit landlocked. And I like to like wakeboard and do water sports behind the boat and things. And I'm not a fan of alligators. I'll take on a shark any day, but like I don't want to mess with alligators. So my dad and I have been great business partners for many, many years. We still work together in a little different capacity. It's evolved as time has gone on, but we've literally never had a single argument,
Wow.
especially about money, because like we can, of course, have different viewpoints and ideas about things, but when it comes to money, I think that I don't know where this idea came from, but I've always viewed money as just a resource unlike any other, or like any other, I should say, where you don't, like we need oxygen, but you don't try to like run around and grab oxygen and hoard oxygen, and so I feel kind of like the same way about money, that you need what you need to do what you're trying to do. It's just something that enables you to carry out whatever your life's mission and purpose is, but you don't need to like get all bent out of shape about it. I mean, fortunately and unfortunately, I've gone through a lot of experiences where like money comes, money goes.
Right.
Yeah, and so we just, I don't know, we hold on to it a little bit more loosely, and when you go through some humbling experiences, that definitely I think enables you to look at money in a different context. I feel kind of lucky that whenever the market crashed, like a lot of real estate professionals back in 2008 and 2009, I went from being quite successful to basically like putting groceries on credit cards for a time. Yeah, and that,
Well, I think along those lines too, I think your health, your family, there's so much more important than money, and it's nice to have that, and
For sure.
that certainly helps. But
yeah.
So, but if you go way back to you're 15, did you go to Sarasota High School? Were you in this area?
Yeah, so we moved here right about that time. I think I was 14. From my dad did some business consulting out west. We had about a year or so in each of Phoenix, Arizona, Las Vegas, a little town near Seattle, Washington. So that was kind of neat. I value those experiences to have been able to kind of like see what life's like in different climates and different parts of the country. And then I also think that, in like formative years, it was an interesting challenge to try to acclimate to a new group of people at a new school and things. And I think, the first move out of Florida going out west, I can remember being a little devastated to have to like leave my friends behind and all that kind of stuff. But I got to recognize that, with each move, in many cases, I ended up meeting a new group of people that, that I was super happy about connecting with. And, so that I think kind of maybe in some way or another helped me understand and learn how to deal with people. And, so that was nice. And then coming back, we were all very happy to come back to this area. I think it's a neat story. We had a family reunion of sorts where the family all decided to gather in this area. I guess it would have been probably late 95 or in 96. And my dad has a brother that lives in Bradenton still. So we all decided to move here, or I'm sorry, not move here, but to have the family reunion here. And we were all like meeting up on Siesta Beach or something. And I was in the car with my parents. We were all at the top of the North Bridge on Siesta Key, and it like hit us all at the same time. I was just like, whoa, this feels like home. This is where we should be. And so, one of the things I love about my dad, he is very action oriented, for the most part. That works out well. There's a couple times I'm sure that maybe he's a little too trigger happy, but so if I'm not mistaken, I think it was about a month or so after being on the pinnacle of the North Bridge on Siesta Key that we were living on Siesta Key. My dad was like, all right, this is what we're doing. We're going to do it.
Here we are.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was pretty awesome.
Nice place, right?
Yeah.
So you at high school, you were living on Siesta Key?
Yeah. So that is interesting because the schools were a bit further ahead in their curriculum out west than they were in Florida at the time, and I think the schools around here have greatly improved from that time till now. But I was a couple grade levels ahead of where the average curriculum was for the middle school that I went to. So I went there like a day or two, and and it just wasn't like a fit, and I just felt like I was twiddling my thumbs, and so I ended up homeschooling for the tail end of 8th grade whenever we moved back, and of course the next year would have been high school. But that few months of homeschool, I actually really quite enjoyed it, and I saw an opportunity that I could work ahead a couple years in high school. So I actually got my high school diploma after basically 2 years of high school, because I just crammed a lot of high school into one and graduated at 16 years old. And so that was kind of like part of the path of becoming an entrepreneur, because now I wasn't in high school. And I did do college. It was whenever the online universities were kind of a new phenomenon. And
Phoenix,
so I went,
or whatever that was.
I went to Kaiser College, and I got my associate's degree. And, there's pros and cons to that. I know there's a lot of debate these days, especially I have an 18-year-old who's a senior in high school right now, and, he shares the things that he finds online. And in a lot of cases, justifiably so, how college isn't really like an essential part of the path, although, definitely pros and cons to that. I'm encouraging him to go to college, but for me, what ended up happening is I ended up becoming pretty successful pretty quickly in real estate. So by the time I got my associate's degree, I came to a crossroads, like, should I carry on and keep going down this college path? But like literally the wheels were falling off my business, and I was making like an unbelievable amount of money. So I was just like,
continue that. That's awesome. And,
yeah.
And that's something I did as well. We moved around a lot. We went to California for 6 months, lived in San Francisco, came back to Illinois. I grew up in Chicago. Even within Chicago, we spent 5 or 6 different homes we lived in, and they were just far enough apart that you'd go to different schools.
Right.
And you'd meet different people. So it kind of forced me as well to have to introduce myself to new people and deal with it. Having 3 brothers as well, we were always together, so that helped. But and I also graduated when I was 16 from high school.
Okay.
And I turned 17 later that night. But it was a 3-year program for me. If you do it, you cram in there. You can over the summer programs and so on. So that's and then awesome. Again, like you, I went on to be successful in what I was doing, and never finished college. Again, got my associates, and it just was everything was working out well. So started choreographing marching bands, drum corps across the country, and then got into medical billing and anesthesia billing and practice management up in Chicago, and then that took off. I had my own company, was doing really well, and like I said, making a ton of money.
Right.
Doing really well, and then went into the real estate business, which is I want to finish my career here and enjoy this, and I have always enjoyed Florida, and wanted to move here as soon as I could. I mean, you spend enough time in Chicago in the wintertime, and you want to be out. But I do go back there sometimes in the summer because it's a beautiful city. But I will tell you, being part of this team here and downtown Sarasota, the image, the marketing you do here at Preferred Shore, the feel, I don't think there's anything better.
Well, thanks for saying that, Kendall. And I mean, likewise, we are so delighted to be working with you and happy to be able to do anything that we can to support your success as you build your business here.
Good. I'm counting on we're going to launch this thing and get better and better. And we will talk real estate here in a little while and the NAR settlements and so on. But I want to go back a little bit more on Robert and talk about. So you're homeschooled. So you didn't have to worry about being a buddy or a bully at school. You were homeschooled, so that didn't even apply.
Yeah.
But tell me about were you in any activity? Being homeschooled, you're not on sports teams. You're not on. Or did you sometimes homeschools gather homeschools together and form a team or something?
Sure.
Did you do any sports, anything at all?
Not like super competitively. I mean, I dabbled in some different rec league stuff, but I would say in Sarasota, oddly enough, the community of peers that I became involved in were mainly surfers, believe it or not, and they're all similar ages. And a great example, one of my great pals is Will McComb, who's a lawyer, real estate attorney at Berlin, Patton Ebling. We work with Will quite a lot, but yeah, I mean, there was himself and quite a few of our other pals that we have for some of them they've gone away and made their way back to Sarasota, and we all are still really close, and in some cases work together quite a lot. And
so were you on the East Coast surfing? Because
we did do a lot of East Coast trips, but when you're like 15 or 16 years old and you don't have anything better to do, like you'll get out there on like a knee or waist high day and grab a longboard and have an awesome time.
Have a good time.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, I did start, when I moved down here, I tried surfing. Never surf. I mean, you're up in Chicago. There's nothing to surf on. But I tried, so I get a longboard and my, I don't know, NSP, 10 foot, 9 foot, whatever. Went out, I lived in Daytona for a while, went out to the beach and headed down to Ponds Inlet.
Okay.
And it was like, what's that movie, A Point Surf or something?
Yeah, Point Break.
Point Break, yeah.
Is that Keanu Reeves?
I was told immediately I don't belong there. And I said, well, the waves look good.
Yeah.
But I was told to move, and I can see why. They have some really good surfers there. I probably surfed, I don't know, hundreds of times, and being a beginner, maybe I caught 10 waves.
Yeah.
But when you do catch one, it was like, wow, that was really fun.
It's a thrill.
It was a thrill. And I got to the point where, again, being new and a beginner, just paddling out there and sitting up on your board on a nice calm day and watching the dolphins go by. It was just so relaxing.
Yeah.
And so.
Well, that's what it is for me and my family. I mean, for my kids, they've kind of not had a choice, but fortunately they have a natural inclination to enjoy the water as well. But I mean, that's our like peaceful, happy place is anything relating to the water. Right. And so our two younger boys, they're into youth sailing, which is awesome. They're on the water all the time. My wife and I are fortunate. We have a boat. We get out quite a lot, and it's a charmed life here in Sarasota.
Exactly.
That's for sure.
I hear you're a great golfer.
I can hit the ball.
you have a beautiful boat. Tell me about your boat.
I mean, it's nothing crazy. It's a 24-foot center console that is what I would consider to be kind of like the Swiss Army knife of boats for this coast, at least, because the Gulf Coast of Florida is very shallow waters. You know, if you're not paying attention, you'll find yourself aground in a hurry. Right. But luckily, I had an awesome childhood boating from basically the time that we moved here on. I think it was only a matter of 6 months or so after we moved here in '96 that my dad purchased a boat, and it needed a little cosmetic repairs and some upholstery and stuff. And so we fixed it all up together, and that was an awesome project for myself and him to do together. And from then on, we've pretty much always had a boat. So. For me, it's super relaxing. I know it's intimidating for some people moving from somewhere else if you're not familiar with the local waters and things, but I can like put my feet up and just kind of cruise, and I know where I'm at, and I know what's safe and what's not. And so when I'm out there, I'm like super relaxed, and it's great. But what's nice is like that size of a boat, it doesn't draw a lot of water. It's good for the water sports behind the boat. All our boys like to wakeboard and do stuff, like the water sports. Also like to fish.
That's a good fishing boat.
It's a great fishing boat. We got they have these trolling motors now with a GPS anchor lock, they call them. It's like a little smaller motor that's electric that's up off the bow. So like that's incredible, and I never had nothing like that when I was a kid fishing, and I used to catch a lot of fish when I was younger too. But yeah, you just like push a button and the boat holds perfectly still wherever you want to be be it like really close to a dock to cast, or even offshore, like if you're diving or doing anything like that. I've not done like a ton of scuba, but I've done some of that and some spear fishing, and there's just like so many little niches of things to do and get involved in as far as hobbies go.
And you prefer that over golfing?
I really enjoy golfing too, and it's funny because it's it's always a moving target. I don't know what the rhyme or reason would be, but sometimes I kind of get the golfing bug, and I'm like in that mode right now where I'd probably just as soon golf as I would
before it gets too hot.
Fish. But like golfing, I love because it totally takes you out of your head, and you just like focus on your next shot if you're doing it right. And we went out on Sunday actually with there's a new it's a redone municipal course, Bobby Jones, and it's been closed for a couple years. I used to go there quite a lot, but I think it was like the 7th or 8th hole. I holed out from about 130 yards, which is the longest shot that I've actually like made in the hole before. I wish it was like a par 3, because that would have been cool to have been like, I got a hole in one, and I got like the plaque. But yeah, I was like, whoa, that was cool. And I have witnesses. Valerie, our vice president, she was present. My wife was there. Valerie's husband. So
nice.
So I'm not just making it up. It happened. It went in the hole.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, take me to let's say a day in the life of Robert. What do you? I'm sure you're not dropping your kids off at school like I am in the minivan. But what do you wake up? Tell me about a day in your life.
Yeah, that's always a moving target also. again, being curious and experimenting and dabbling, I have tried an unbelievable amount of variations of like a morning routine, if you will, and optimizing and what works best. And it's always a moving target. So what it's presently like is, and this is always malleable. I mean, I find that I work best creatively. I'm actually not doing a whole lot with the kids in the morning. My wife is fantastic. She does the kid drop off for the most part. Preston was my responsibility formerly, but now he's older, he's driving, so that kind of freed up a little time for me. But my creative time and, my priority is creating and thinking about the future and strategizing, and all of that has to happen before noon for me.
Okay.
So, sometimes that's from the house, sometimes that's like here at the office, shutting my door, and the like one non-negotiable rule for me is that I really don't take any appointments to speak of before noon. And that way, like every day when I wake up, I know that I'm not going to be like waking up kind of behind the eight ball, like, oh man, I gotta, I'm I slept in 15 minutes and I'm going to be late for this. And then it's just like a chain reaction of being, reactive versus proactive. So that gives me like a lot of peace to wake up and know each day that, if I slept in an extra 10 minutes, it's not a deal killer. If I woke up early and want to do something.
Because it's your 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It's on you.
Yeah. I mean, and like, not to say that I do a lot of recreational stuff, but I think that what most people are seeking in life is freedom. And, it's usually not like a tremendous amount of money that's required to attain that. And so like, not that I actually do it a lot, but if I wake up one day and I'm like, oh, it's really nice today and there's no wind, maybe I'll go paddleboarding for an hour before I like start checking emails or whatever I decide to do. Like, I can do that. And again, like, I'm more of a creature of habit, so I probably won't do that. But just knowing that I
You
can,
could.
that
Right.
I think that gives you a lot of peace.
Yep, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
So we booked our appointment at 11:30 this morning, so
you're
I
all
cut
good.
into that time.
It's all good, brother.
Wow, this must be good. Tell me about your family. You have a beautiful family. Where you and your wife meet? Was that here?
Yeah, that was in Jeffersonville, Indiana, of all places.
Whoa.
My dad was formerly a minister and has a lot of friends in that, in that space. So he was invited to like a event where there was a few different churches getting together, and my wife and I met at that event, and she was living in Atlanta at the time, and I was living here in Sarasota, and we were quite young. I was 18 and she was 16, and so we dated a couple years, and that was before that people had unlimited minutes or calling on their cell phones, and so like I was paying heavy phone bills, and I would fly her to visit us or vice versa at least like once a month, because when we met, it was just like love at first sight, and we just like really clicked. And it was probably a dumb kid decision, but we decided to get married a couple years later when I was 20 and she was 18. And it maybe wasn't that dumb because it all worked out brilliantly.
Yes,
but
yes.
It was just we were both a bit more mature than our peers, and I, for whatever reason, have always kind of like been more, I don't know how to characterize this, but like I'm lightening up and having more fun now. I was more like a stodgy old man when I was younger than I am now. So I was like very focused on the future and getting everything for my life set and in order. And so that was like a big piece of it. And we knew that that's what we wanted to do. And our parents didn't have any objections to that. And so we got married, and like I said, we didn't know what we didn't know. It was probably a dumb kid decision, but in retrospect, it was an awesome decision. And it worked out really well.
One of those times you just leap of faith and you went for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You didn't do the whole even keel, let's make sure, and that's good. I mean, I think it's awesome, and you've been together ever since. That doesn't happen too often.
Yeah, no, we're very fortunate, and I mean, not to say that we've done anything like better than anybody else when that's not the case. We're just lucky that we've grown together versus growing apart,
And you have how many children?
3 boys.
3 boys.
Yeah, 18, 13, and 9.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you ever want to try for a girl? Are you done? That's it?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we did. And we did try for the girl. Didn't get it.
You have 3 boys. Wow. Well, cool. And they're all doing good. Any of them want to get involved in real estate?
Somewhat. I mean, I'm pretty passive about maybe passive's not, that's too strong of a word. I'm like very malleable to whatever the future holds. I don't have that expectation for them, although I wouldn't discourage it. So yeah, we're in the throes of this right now with our oldest who's graduating high school, and I have no doubt that he'll find his way, but it's interesting, and I enjoy, it's causing me to like retrace some of my thoughts and, like, anxieties is too strong of a word. He's not like anxious about anything, but there's like some discomfort whenever you don't know what you're going to do and you don't know what the future holds. And I don't know. So like I'm revisiting and reminiscing a little bit about this time period in my life and just trying to do what I can to be supportive for him and help him figure out the future.
I think it's difficult. We put a lot of pressure on these kids in high school to say, okay, what do you want to do the rest of your life? And I don't know that we ever know that answer.
Right.
At any point.
Right.
So at 18, 16, 17, I think it's tough to say,
Yeah.
I go to college, spend a lot of money, learn this trade. You think you're going to do this, whether it's a business degree or whatever it is. I think it's a lot of pressure at an early age. And
Absolutely.
with my children, I'm just going to push them forward. I have 3 young ones and 3 older. I have 6.
Mm-hmm.
And I've learned from the older ones. I think I'm probably the best dad now to my youngest.
Nice.
Because, your first one comes out, you don't know what you're doing.
No, and there's a lot of priorities as a younger man that you're trying to like build your life still.
Yep.
You're a little distracted.
So I think it's great that you just let them feel it out and see what happens.
Yeah, I don't have giant expectations, and one of the things that I really appreciate about my parents, and I'm trying my best to follow suit, they didn't, really prioritize academics in terms of like scoring high as far as grades go, and but they did prioritize being curious and reading a lot. So it was kind of like, we just weren't wired for like higher education. That wasn't my parents' background, and it's not been mine. I see the value in it, and I would love to see my kids pursue that if they have a natural proclivity to go that direction. But I ended up basically being self-taught, and I read a lot. My parents gave me kind of like an unlimited budget at Barnes and Nobles, even though we were like not like uber wealthy or anything like that, but that was kind of, like a little bit of a sacrifice that
good way to invest your money.
Whatever I was interested in reading and being curious, they would encourage that, and so I still am an avid reader and just a learner to this day. And so that's been the main thing I've focused on with my kids, is just that, like, we want you to get good grades, obviously, because we'd love for you to have the choice to participate in higher education if that's what you decide to pursue. However, like, the real priority is like, what are you reading? What are you curious about? What are you kind of like diving deep into? And so it's like flattering for me to see that kind of working out. My son Preston, I'm proud of him. He's got a pretty sizable library already by now. He's like an 18-year-old young man, and he crushes a couple books a week. And
even though you get most of that now on an iPad, but it's almost better to get the books.
He loves getting the hardcovers. I think that's super cool. But the conversations that I'm able to have with him, I mean, I think that he's going to be a great strategist ahead as well. And I think it's cool that the effort that, I mean, it was all him, it wasn't me, but like, he's really developed himself and he's learned a lot, and we can have some really fascinating conversations, which is pretty cool. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let me ask you one more question here before we get into the real estate piece of this. That's coming next. But if you could change one thing in your life from the past, what would it be and why?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate to say I really don't have any like severe regrets whatsoever. I mean, if there's anything that like I wish could have been a little bit different, maybe, not that it would have had like a tremendous difference, but I think that there's just some lessons in life that you learn, that you just have to experience to learn. And I think that it would have, in some cases, been awesome to learn, have those lessons, a little earlier on, so that you can like book that away and then move past it, And so,
right.
So there's definitely been like some times that I was just kind of like spiraling, aimless, without a lot of direction, and but it also is like what made me who I am, and I wouldn't change anything about that. So, the thing that's coming to mind now is like I was a little lost for a couple years, maybe 2-3 years after the Great Recession, where, I was like trying to figure out, like, holy cow, everything that I thought I knew about life has been totally destabilized. So like, what do I do now? And like, what's the future look like? And I think that, going through that hardship definitely humbled me and changed me as a person much for the better. That's a good thing. But I also think that it would have been practical to like have been able to learn that lesson a little bit more quickly to like, all right, well, this happened and let's compartmentalize that and let's move forward. And because I just feel like I was like trying to like find myself for a little too long.
Pull down into that.
Right. And then the other big lesson, I think, and this is true for any entrepreneur. I mean, it's funny how, as an entrepreneur, it's always a balance between playing offense and defense. I think, hindsight's 20/20, but I would have been much better served to not be so defensive for a lot of years after that, and been a little bit more of a risk taker, because having experienced a great loss, I focused understandably on like not losing the gains that I was building as my career progressed. And, had I played a little bit more offensively, I definitely would have been quite a lot further ahead.
And I think I did some of that too. I mean, when the Great Recession came, stocks just tumbled.
Right.
You lost half of everything.
Sure.
I pulled back and put everything in cash. Mm-hmm. And then it just sat there.
Yeah.
And
so cash isn't good these days.
Today, it didn't work out well. But
yeah.
Do you ever get anybody who tells you you have a celebrity lookalike?
I haven't heard that too much. I don't know if who is there someone that comes to mind.
It comes to me. It does, and I don't know. My wife says I don't know, but I see Seth MacFarlane.
Really?
So I wonder if you can do.
Yeah, he's a good-looking dude. So
he's
a funny dude.
Do any voices of his? No,
I do not do any voice impressions.
Okay, so we're going to move on now to talk about real estate a little bit here. We have to talk about that. The NAR settlement.
Yeah.
My perspective on that is, and having my own businesses in the past, anytime they come up with new rules and regulations, it just creates a whole nother way to sell yourself and and show. We have to start doing this now. I'm the best at that. Mm-hmm. How do you? What's your take on that? Do you feel that way too?
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember the source of this quote, but I love it because it makes you think that for things to stay the same, a lot of things are going to have to change.
Right. True.
So that said, I think I've always been one to embrace change. I welcome change. I'm actually energized by change, and I know that not all changes are positive. There can be adverse changes, but what with this, and I mean, in terms of my opinion, I think you learn more about the person or the predictor than you do about the actual subject matter at hand that we're talking about. But I don't expect any incredibly adverse effects to come to the real estate profession as a result of this settlement, and I actually welcome most of the changes. Seem really sensible to me. The thing that I think's great about this settlement is bringing clarity to buyers as you are establishing a relationship with them, to kind of like sit them down for a second beforehand before you just start like going through a bunch of houses and say like, hey, here's how I work. Here's the way that the industry works. Here's my expectations that I'm going to commit a fair amount of time to you, and I expect a reasonable amount of a commitment, back to me in terms of loyalty. If you're going to be, enlisting me to help you accomplish your goals, here's how my fee structure works. Here's the probability that the seller's most likely going to be covering my compensation, but in the event that the house that's best for you is not going to be compensated on the seller side for me to help you buy that house, then you'd be responsible for that on your side of the column. And so I think having that like little bit of a establishing the guidelines and the rules of the road, that's absolutely healthy, and I wish it would have been adopted much earlier on. But the problem has been that no other realtors have been really utilizing buyer broker agreements. So it was just not practical to try to sit somebody down and go through that type of a process with them whenever everybody else wasn't.
I think that's the key to the word. You said, sit them down, and that's what I want to do on all my podcasts: is sit down, talk to somebody, figure out where they've been, where they want to go, because there's so many and we're not even talking about the agreement and will you pay me or will you won't you pay me, who's going to pay me. That to me is the end piece of that. But to sit them down and get to know who they are.
Absolutely.
There are so many neighborhoods here in Sarasota. I mean, I love Arlington Park here. Lakewood Ranch has a million different neighborhoods. Where's a good fit? And you don't know that unless you sit them down and talk about, they may be coming from New York City or Chicago and they would love to plug in downtown here.
Yeah.
Even if they have kids. But if they have kids, what neighborhoods? If they're 55 and old, there are so many things and questions to ask that I enjoy talking to people like yourself and my buyers. And I would spend hours before I would say, okay, now let's go look at these homes based on what you just told me. And I think that the start of your value right there is, gathering information.
Yeah, for sure.
And then showing them how you're going to help them in the whole process, and which is a litmus test of 20 or 30 or 50 different things you're going to do for them. Check off, making sure this closing goes and according to plan and so on. But one more thing along that lines is how many, on a percentage-wise, how many listings do you think are going to actually change going forward? I mean,
in terms of the compensation offered?
And I mean, maybe they lower it a little bit or whatever, but how many are not going to offer that?
Right. Well, I mean, again, you'll learn more about the predictor than you will about the reality because nobody knows what the future holds. What this to me is symptomatic of a very hot market in the recent years, and it being too easy to sell a house. So understandably, that those are the seasons that the commission structure comes into question because there's a lot of other huge corporate entities that are trying to get a piece of the pie. There's customers that are like, hey, my realtor didn't seem to work too hard for this $50,000 or whatever. Pretty sizable check that they ended up attaining. So the commission structure understandably gets scrutinized in those types of markets. It was very similar in 2005, 2006, and I've been practicing as a realtor since 2001. As you mentioned, I have been in real estate since I was 15 years old, so quite a bit before then even. But what I've also seen, I think it's fortunate I've been through a couple cycles, and the market is great right now, and that's the most important thing, that people are actually transacting business and units are being sold. And the flip side of this, and I don't think that we're headed towards a severe crash by any means. I wouldn't want to mischaracterize that. But the market is going to slow down a touch, and it's going to become increasingly difficult ahead. Probably in the midpoint of 2025, it'll be a little bit more difficult than it is presently to sell a home. And so in those cases, it's a matter of the customer, meaning the seller, trying to choose, like, if I'm struggling to sell my home, is it really sensible for me to diminish the incentive that I'm offering to a community of professionals that are going to help me move my life forward? And the answer to that is overwhelmingly no. So what my guess is that if you see a change in the compensation plan of any kind, and that's a big if, it's probably going to be most applicable to the lower end segment of the market, where people are usually a little bit more ambitious to roll up their sleeves and save a nickel, and that's great. I think that that customers should have the right to do that, and they have always had the right to do that. I mean, the reality is that commissions have always been negotiable, and you could, for many years, probably more than a decade, put your house in the MLS for a flat fee of a few $100s, and you could offer as little as $1 cooperating broker compensation. So, for all intents and purposes, you could participate in our real estate market for less than $400. So that's always been the case for decades. And so the headlines are very sensational of like, oh, the 6% commission's gone. And so no, it's been a very free market approach to how our fees are structured. And I've recalled the flip side of it and say like 2009, 2010, when it was very difficult to sell a home. I mean, banks were not lending money to anybody.
Right.
Inventory was spiking. It was the absolute, full tilt pendulum swing in the opposite direction. And in that case, I remember plenty of customers being like, hey, I got to move. And like, I'll pay you 10% if you can make this house go away. Like I had it listed with my last realtor for 6 months and they didn't even have a single showing. So what's it take? Do I have to do like 6% plus a giant bonus? I mean, sellers were willing to literally do whatever it takes. So it's a very free market based fee structure. And, to answer your question directly is that I would be surprised if the status quo changes much at all going forward. Right. And I think that the market got it right to begin with. I think that the way that things have been presently structured is best for customers. It's best for having a efficient market where, as far as, in financial markets, the term is liquidity, of how easy and quickly that you're able to sell something. So, as far as real estate goes, it's less liquid than like stocks and things where you can clickety click and instantly sell.
Right.
But as far as real estate goes, we've had a fairly liquid market that if you had a life event or I had a life event and we had to sell our house, there was a very robust marketplace that we had a path that could happen lickety split. And, I think to eradicate the incentive to have a community of people focused on facilitating the market is not good for the market. It's not good for customers. And, I'm very unbiased in this regard. I'm not saying that because like I'm trying to protect our livelihood or anything. I'm just looking at it purely from an objective standpoint. I think that the way things have been structured is generally how the market functions best.
So, yeah. And you had mentioned it too. I think you said maybe what you're going to see is maybe fewer agents in the market.
That could be.
Because
That's fine.
the really good agents should be rising up to the top now, and they should stick out. I mean, they should
Absolutely.
show their value and be worth that value.
Right.
And I've seen that with some agents I've worked with. You can see some really great agents out there.
Absolutely.
And absolutely, I would want them to
Yeah.
bring a buyer to the table.
Of course. Well, like any profession, I mean, there's good doctors, bad doctors,
Right.
good lawyers, bad lawyers, good realtors, bad realtors. And so I think that little like check and balance procedure of having to sit down with a customer and explain how things work will weed out some realtors who are inept or not very seasoned in the business or not willing to actually provide
spend the time.
value
Right.
and spend the time
Right.
because I think that it's going to be it's going to be easier for the agents that are demonstrating value to have a even more functional market because from a brokerage operation standpoint, I mean, I think where I've seen most of the problems, and fortunately we're pretty selective how we curate the roster of agents that we have at our firm. That's a variable that we're in control over. But the variable we're not in control over is the realtor on the other side of the transaction.
Right.
And so, where I've seen a lot of problems in terms of like poor service, customer complaints, even like procuring cause issues, things like that, is some of these large online platforms that you can like pay, a substantial amount per lead to be like kind of automatically connected with people. And so I think that an adversity in the way the market has functioned is that for somebody that's willing to show up and write big checks on a monthly basis to be connected with customers would get a seat at the table and get those opportunities regardless of their ability to serve customers and to
Right.
do a good job. So, so that said, I think that those agents in that type of a scenario are going to find it much more difficult to operate in the future, that you can't just like write a check and get connected with
Right,
someone
yeah.
and then
And I think
sell them a house.
that too. I mean, I have leads coming my way all the time, and it's so. I want to sit down and talk to those people. I want to meet with them. I want them to be my friend a long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not just a transactional broker.
Sure.
But I want to know more about you, and that makes me feel good then.
Yeah.
That I've helped them in their journey. So one more question then. Let's talk about the Fed came out and it's not going to lower the interest rates. And they weren't too optimistic about the future. I've also said at one point, I said, also inventory seems to be up substantially here.
Yeah.
Days on market longer.
Yeah.
And the last piece of that was that apparently, I've read someplace at Sarasota, Manatee County, the median sales price has fallen over 4% or 5% recently.
That's probably right. Yeah.
Which to me, there's corrections all the time. I mean,
Sure.
you get into real estate 20 years ago, and you'd be doing really well now.
Yeah.
So if you hang on to it long term, you'll be fine.
Yeah.
But is that about how the market's going in Sarasota now?
Well, there's a couple of subsets of the market that are not correlating at all, which is interesting, meaning that the higher end of the market in very choice locations is still actually, by and large, appreciating and still selling
Doing
quickly when priced appropriately. And then the troubled spot would be like more dated communities a little further east that are like gated and, not like in blight or anything like that, but just like early 2000s, cosmetically needing some updates.
Right.
maybe adjacent to new build, new communities that are being master planned and developed. And, it's just really hard for those resales that are slightly dated to be competitive with the, these days, because, things are slowing down a little bit. There's unbelievable builder incentives. There's incredible incentives on the financing that's offered through the new communities. And so, that inventory is struggling quite a lot and is coming down in price a bit, and but versus the super choice properties not being affected to the same extent. So, so it is literally like that local knowledge required, and it's a case by case basis. But as far as the interest rates go, I'm not surprised at all to hear that the Fed is not reducing rates at any point during the course of this year. If they would have reduced rates, that would have been the first time in U.S. history that the Federal Reserve had reduced rates in an election year, because they do, for better or for worse, try their best to appear to be apolitical, which I'm not sure they actually are apolitical, neutral, but at least as far as appearances go, they don't tamper with rates during an election year. So this would have been the first election year of U.S. history that the Federal Reserve would have adjusted rates. So I'm not surprised by that at all.
So keeping with that thought, that probably means we're not going to see anything until November, December.
Probably, and and I don't have any fundamental issues with that. I mean, I'm not like.
I mean, it's still a good rate. It's not.
It's
like
still a
16%.
great rate. It's still a great rate, and again, I'm a little bit more of a longer term thinker, and I'm not audacious enough to even pretend like I know all of the ramifications of the complexities of our whole monetary policy and system and everything else. But what I am pleased to see, as far as the Federal Reserve goes, is that in the 70s, if I'm not mistaken, whenever interest rates did spike, they did kind of whipsaw the rates around a little bit too quickly. And then whenever at a time right about where we're at right now, they're like, oh, things are getting a touch worse, so we're gonna lower rates and try to stimulate the economy a little bit. Well, it kind of did this double dip of inflation, where inflation ended up spiking, and I really like a second wave of an inflation spike. And I believe that if they were to lower rates again right now, that would probably be the case, where so for the long-term viability of keeping things fairly balanced, I think the right thing to do is to not raise rates right now, because we still have very, very historically low unemployment. And I think that until we start to see more weakness in the overall economy, we probably have to keep rates high to not cause that double dip of inflation. And then, because then if inflation were to spike again, then that's whenever you see whoa, now we got to take rates up to 12% to kill the inflation. And then it's just
it's killing everything.
Absolutely diabolical.
It's a nuclear bomb. It's just wipe it out. Cool. Well, this is great information. I appreciate you joining with me. I want to ask you one last question. What's you're downtown Sarasota? Let's go back to yourself now. You're downtown Sarasota. You and your wife are going out for dinner. Where are you going? Where are your top? Maybe I don't have to pinpoint one, but maybe 2 or 3 spots.
Yeah. So I mean, the first that comes to mind is we've been fortunate. We've been a member of Sarasota Yacht Club for about 10 years, give or take now. And that's usually top of the list. And aside from the food being incredible, the staff is just absolutely phenomenal. They, you get to know them personally. They know your name. They, learn your preferences, and
cheers.
It's fantastic. So that would definitely be top of the list. It's a wonderful experience. Secondarily, I like to eat a lot of beef, so that's kind of my thing.
Keith told me you're a carnivore, and
pretty much, yeah. So I eat a lot of steak, and so there's a rotation of steakhouses that we love right across from our office. Hyde Park's fantastic. I go there quite a lot. Fleming's, kind of towards Siesta Drive, is another good spot that we find ourselves at quite a lot. But so anywhere. I love Classico downtown. People don't. It's an Italian chop house. People don't think of that as a steakhouse, but they have a fantastic ribeye there.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. This is, like I said, I love coming down here. I'm out in Lakewood Ranch area. Just coming down here just gives me a breath of fresh air. It feels really good. It's a fun place. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And you've done a great job in this building too, and your staff here.
So much.
And I would be remiss if I didn't finish out by telling you that one of the things our producer here, Keith, wanted was a door for his office here. So if you can manage that or put it into...
We have got it in the works, my man.
Works. Okay, good. All right. Well, I appreciate you being with me, and I can't thank you enough.
Yeah.
It was my honor to sit here and talk to you and learn more about you and Preferred Shore, real estate, and who you were and back in the day. This was fun, and I hope you all join me in my next podcast. We will have other folks from Sarasota and Southwest Florida here that we want to learn more about. And so thank you for watching, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Kendall. This has been fantastic. I
Thank
appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right.